Health Junkies. On this episode of the Health Fix podcast, I'm interviewing Jennifer C. Brower. She's a fifth generation Floridian. She's a wellness advocate and the author of The Silent Killers. In her book, she shares her courageous journey navigating Lyme disease, mold toxicity, mercury poisoning, and the aftermath of the COVID-19 virus. Wow, lots of years of misdiagnosis and an emotional toll with a lot of invisible lines. What Jennifer experiences is something I see quite often in my office. And so it is great to hear that she has created a book that is much like a handbook for folks to really understand the hidden dangers of mold and why it's overlooked, to understand the winding, crazy path of chronic illness and how it is common to have many misdiagnoses, along with docs that may be frustrated trying to help you. And unfortunately, a lot of folks are getting passed off, and that's not cool. And this is where Jennifer comes in, and we talk about ozone therapy. We talk about infrared saunas. We talk about how her pool is like her lifesaver for her and how she loves getting into water, and that's her best nervous system reset. I know I talk a lot about that in the podcast in terms of how you can find what works for you. And she definitely talks through all the different things she's tried and what worked for her and what didn't. And hey, you know what? We're all on our own journey to figure out what's going on with us. We're all individual. And so I hope that this podcast gives you a little sense of things you can do if you're feeling stuck, things you might want to try, but also if you know anyone that is really dealing with chronic illness or not getting answers to why they're experiencing multiple different symptoms that maybe don't seem to go together, you want to check out this podcast and then look into Jennifer's book, The Silent Killers. All right, well, I've talked her up. Let's introduce you to Jennifer C. Brower. Welcome to the Health Fix podcast, where health junkies get their weekly fix of tips, tools, and techniques to have limitless energy, sharp minds, and fit physiques for life. Jennifer Brower, welcome to the Health Fix podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Hey, no problem. No problem. This is exciting for me. I have been checking out your book. It's definitely a resource that a lot of my patients are going to love. Silent Killers, these are things that I see every day in my practice as we're working with mystery illness, but also working with what seems to be, as women get older and go through perimenopause, menopause, it almost seems like that combined with things that show up all kind of come down on someone all at the same time. So give us a little background in terms of, I'm looking at this and going, Lyme disease, mold toxicity, mercury poisoning, coronavirus, long haul, all that kind of stuff. A lot of folks are like, how can it be possible that a body could have that many things going on? And obviously you're here to show us that that is a thing. So how did this start for you? How did the process start to come about? What was going on in your life at that time?
So, I was bitten by a spider actually in Southwest Florida in 2007, and I had some reaction to it, and I was training for a half marathon, thinking I was going to go for a run. I was actually out of town celebrating my 10th wedding anniversary. Needless to say, the celebration did not exactly go as planned, and I kind of was immobile for a couple of days. And, I think a lot of it was the panic from a spider that bit me in the middle of the night. So I just hit it and killed it. And the next morning I woke up and I was like, I told my husband, I can't move. Something's way wrong with me. So I was familiar with brown recluse spiders, and it wasn't that because it didn't leave a mark. And I, was, like I said, super healthy. I was a big runner, played tennis and at some businesses, and I had 3 young kids. And, like I said, I was celebrating an anniversary, and my body my immune system seemed to shut down for a couple of days. But then once we got back home in Northeast Florida, my immune system seemed to kick back in, and I got back into, running and whatnot. And then unfortunately, and this happens quite a bit, and people don't understand that, that your immune system can kind of, handle one thing at a time. And I unfortunately had a traumatic experience happen about 10 years later. And also at the same time, there was mold in my house and I didn't know it. And so, like, all of a sudden, my immune system was not working. So I was trying to figure out what was going on. And because I live in Northeast Florida, Mayo Clinic is literally 5 minutes from my house. So I was going there and I just kept getting misdiagnosed and they kept trying to put me on psych meds and things that, I was like, no, you don't get it. Like I'm having these crazy, weird sensitivities and wasn't sleeping. It was really very catastrophic. And I was trying to figure out, okay, what's in my body that I can get rid of? And so that's where the mercury came in because I decided maybe, my immune system's not working because I have mercury amalgams. It was kind of during that era that people started becoming aware of the dangers of having mercury amalgams. So I had those taken out and I had them taken out by a doctor who told me exactly, oh, yes, I know exactly how to do it. But what happened was as he was removed, I had 7 mercury amalgams. And as he was removing them, I ingested it through my nose because he didn't put oxygen on me. And so it settled right here in my forehead. I called the doctor later that day because I was telling my husband, oh my God, something's like super way wrong again. That we called the doctor and said, could you have hit a nerve root? Could you have done something? And he was like, well, if I did, it's, it'll go away. And it didn't. So I started, I started juicing and doing everything I could, thinking, okay, I got to get rid of the mercury. As you know, being a doctor, once you start on that path of like trying to clean out your system, it starts picking up other things as well, right? So, um, I I met with a dietitian who said, okay, you need to be juicing and you need to have cilantro in there and that'll, help with the mercury. And then you need to have like a binding agent and just, it was overwhelming. It was absolutely overwhelming, but I just thought, okay, where do I start? Right? You have to get rid of the mold. It was in my house. And I live in a 1937, my house was built in 1937. It wasn't the original part of the house that had the mold in it. It was part that somebody else had added and didn't do the right job adding. And so that's where the mold happened to be. Yeah, so I was really bombarded and had Mayo Clinic sent me to their Rochester office, the Lyme disease would have been found immediately, but they didn't know what didn't. And so I just was being misdiagnosed for many, many years on that. So yeah, it took a toll, but through so many different practices and modalities, I was able to, kind of work back into a healthy life and a healthy lifestyle. But it took many, many, many years and a significant amount of money to do it. And so that's why I wrote the book. I wrote the book so other people wouldn't suffer as long and maybe like, let's do a shortcut for you to learn and get the correct diagnosis faster so you know how to handle it.
It's absolutely crucial to speed up the process because so many people are suffering for a long time, really not knowing or kind of being brushed off. Like you said, you had first been given, psych meds. Now, in your journey, because I'm guessing back then internet wasn't, there wasn't
Oh no.
TikTok and the
Oh,
internet and whatnot. How were you getting information? Did you have, a functional medicine like doctor? Because even back then that wasn't a thing as much. How did you end up learning? What did you do?
so there in our community, there is a actually world renowned autism doctor. And she said, yeah, I'm going to take you on. We're going to figure this out. And she has, hyperbaric chambers, very forward thinking as far as like doing vitamin IVs and whatnot, because I started going down the Lyme path of I've had 2 ports, one on one side. And then once it died, I had to go get another one because I was like, doing all these antibiotics and that, because that's what everybody said when I started figuring out Lyme, it was like, oh, you need to do this route. Like, I was Dr. Jemsick. I mean, all these really well-known doctors that I was, trying to talk to and do their protocols, but it was all antibiotics, and that just deteriorated my gut. So that's when I started going, okay, what are other ways to get rid of it? Like raindrop therapy, and then most people that have dealt with a serious illness, there's other components that go with it. So I started doing work with the emotion code, trying to get rid of, okay, what's trapped in my body that I don't know about. So I started working with emotion code practitioners to help me figure out things that may be stuck. And that's why the second half of my book is written by practitioners that I worked with. So I talk about, I have them talk about working with me, and then, why what the importance is of, sweating to detox things out of your body, and juicing to put good things into your body, Chinese medicine, acupuncture, massage therapy, exercise. I just asked all these people who kind of became my health team to please write about their experience and why their specialty aided in my healing.
I like to hear that you had a team, because I think it's very common for folks to think with our society and how medicine works is that there's one pill, there's one treatment, there's one thing that's going to solve their problem. And I will see a lot of people that come to my clinic and go, wait, you want me to do this, and this? Speak to how all of these different things that you found helpful were really synergistic for you.
So, like, I found somebody who did the therapies with essential oils and working with essential oils in your nervous system. And, her testing system with the zygote. And it was amazing how essential oils started helping in my healing process and just helping bring clarity back, because it's such a lonely road. It's such a lonely road because you feel like you're so singled out and you don't know which way to turn. And so you look at things, or I started looking at things thinking, okay, I've got to come back to more natural healing because all these other things are not working. And I had 3 young kids, so it was like I was not planning on, and I was extremely sick. And I was like, there is not going to be a stepmother in this picture. I was like bound and determined I was going to figure it out, because I didn't want somebody else raising my kids, and you kind of have to like grab onto something like that to grab the strength and say, I'm going to figure this out. And yeah, do I do did I do some things that seemingly a little crazy? Like, I found that in dealing with different modalities and adding different modalities really was helpful. And so I traveled quite a bit, and I did the doctor hop, because a lot of people do the doctor hop. And that's what you have to do to really figure out like what works. And so I started learning about different modalities that I could do on myself with magnets, like using magnets. And I didn't understand that magnets could pH balance your body, and the importance of keeping a pH balanced body. So that's why I started juicing and started using magnets and started doing things that people are like, what are you talking about? But when you kind of add all those modalities together, you can start balancing your system back again, and you start getting the strength. That it was hard to write that book, because you so want to just close the chapter. You know what I mean? You just want to be like, okay, I'm done with all of that. But then I thought was so close to not making it, and I felt so lonely, and I had a loving family and I had all these things, but I still felt like nobody got it. And I felt like, I had to live, I had to make it, and I had to get back to not just being, but like being good. Right. And so I just kept searching, and that's why I went back and went through that book. And it brought back a lot of different sadness and loneliness, and desperate thinking. And I thought, okay, like I need to let people know that it's okay to not be okay, but to figure out why you're not okay, you know? And it was when I got COVID, it brought the fear back of, oh my God, is the Lyme disease back? And because COVID knocked me sideways and I got it before it was a thing, you know, so I had bronchitis, sinusitis, all these things. And so, you know, unfortunately, COVID does it takes a toll on your immune system. So some people do have some symptoms come back of things that they have healed from, as you know. And I won't even go too far into that, but you can still use some of those modalities that I had used with Lyme disease and mold toxicity to heal from COVID, you know, and go back and rebuild your body again. And that's what you have to do. You just have to take the panic mode out of it, because I would be that person calling you 100 times saying, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling this, I understand it now, and I'm able to take deep breaths through it and go, okay, just hold on. You haven't lost your mind. You know, it's the simplest things like misplacing your car keys. You know, it used to send me in a tizzy thinking, oh my God, okay, because I was so sick and I didn't, it was so hard to keep up with everything. And that was something that I wanted to be able to explain to people, that it is a process and it was a journey and you can get through it, but you somehow have to separate the fear factor out of it.
Absolutely. The fear is something I see. Like you're saying, the patient who calls me multiple times in a day, maybe portal messages me multiple times in a day. For an average doctor, that's probably overwhelming if you don't understand when someone's in panic mode and the fear. And this is something that I loved about what you highlight on in your book, because so many people will get into fear mode and it's desperation mode to find, I'm gonna try to find the thing that works. I'm gonna try to find that thing that works. When you were finding yourself there, it sounded like you had to kind of slow yourself down. Is this where emotion code work came into play and kind of helped you to go, okay, this is gonna be, everything's gonna be okay? What were some of the nervous system tools that you use to kind of help you to realize that, okay, I'm not gonna go all the way back. I can control this, all of that.
Well, I am more than grateful that I live near the ocean, and I actually have a saltwater pool. And so when my nervous system really started wigging out, I found out by getting in salt water and literally decompressing my body, and I could get out of the panic mode because I could ground myself. And if whether it was put my feet in the grass, I would lay in the grass. I would do the craziest things to ground myself, because I did have to find, I've got to calm down so I can think through it and let the fear kind of, dissipate a bit, so you can kind of come back into reality. Because when the fear mode takes over, then you become incapacitated again, and then it's the worry. And then, that I went so many months with not sleeping. There were so many, things about my central nervous system that wreaked havoc on me. And I found by exercising, by swimming, by infrared saunas, that I could start dissipating some of that. It would calm my central nervous system down. And I was working with a doctor who had been a Navy pilot, and he was still active in the Navy. And we came up with this concoction of using a dive tank with 59% oxygen and 41% nitrogen. That combination, I could put my dive tank on, get in my pool, and like literally swim around the bottom of my pool for 10 minutes. And it would have been like being in a hyperbaric chamber for over an hour. But I've gotten exercise, I've got the salt water, getting rid of the pain. And so, you just start figuring out the craziest things sometimes to really be able to go out and hug a tree, basically, and just get grounded enough that you can think through things, because it is the panic that sends your nervous system deeper into a state of non-healing, right? So if we can calm it down enough to think, okay, what do I need to do today? what do I need to do? And you start taking it more moment by moment versus panic. Oh my God, I've got this and I've got that. I mean, it is essential to find a balance of peace, whatever that looks like for you. You know what I mean? I think all the time about people who live in big cities and are surrounded by Wi-Fi and G and all these other things. And I think to myself, I just am going to go and do a deep dive into water somewhere, somehow, so I stay wet a lot. I still stay wet a lot because that is my peace. Everybody has a different, I say, find your modality that works for you and utilize it, whatever it may be, because then all the other pieces of the puzzle can start coming together. Motion code was so essential, and people hadn't really heard about it at the time. It wasn't a big thing. And now more and more doctors are using it because it helps with cancer patients. It helps with, getting out traumas that we have stuck in our memories that we don't even know are there.
Yeah. It's very fascinating, the nervous system and its interplay here. And one of the things I think about in terms of the nervous system and mystery illness, silent illness, things of that nature is our connection to others. And it sounds like you had a very supportive family. But what about friends? What happened in that department? I think a lot of people I find in my practice tend to end up with friends on forums that are in a similar situation that may or may not be the healthiest place to find
Yeah.
friends. So give us some advice there.
Okay. So I have a super dear friend who's married to a doctor, and her children were the same age as my children. And she really stepped in and really was supportive. So if I started having, a panic attack or whatever was going on, I would literally go outside and I would be able to, have her nearby, and I could be like, okay, I'm like freaking out and I'm having this panic attack, and but your friend base becomes so narrow, and as far as support groups, I didn't do the support group thing. And that's because I didn't want to think I had that symptom. I didn't want to, hear other people's symptoms and think, oh my God, do I have that too? So I didn't do the support group thing. A lot of people need it. I now have a support group through, Silent Killers. We do have a community, but we really do not thrive on the negative. It's more the positive, what's going on, just really elevating people to a new place. So whether it's through meditation, which is extremely helpful, there's so much science about meditating and thinking about healing yourself, healing your body, replacing, nerve endings that you feel like are on edge all the time. I do a lot of work with that. And it was so interesting because it was very interesting. I had a lot of people ask me about the chapter about attitude of gratitude and thinking that I was following a certain modality. And I had multiple podcast people ask me if I followed this particular Dr. Joe Dispenza because of my attitude of gratitude. And I was like, it was crazy because it was like that thing of three. I was talking to a lady in London and she said, oh, wow, do you follow Dr. Joe Dispenza? No. And then, I'm talking to somebody in California, asked me the same question, talking to somebody in South Florida, and again, and then all of a sudden it pops up and I see this event, Dr. Joe Dispenza in Nashville, Tennessee. And I was like, I can't believe this is all happening, but I'm going. I'm just going to go. I just did it. And that was an amazing opportunity. And then I went to another one that he had, and I witnessed other people healing. And it's through positive energy, positive vibrations, giving out love. You know, my family was scared because I went downhill really fast. I was the go get 'em mom. I was the head of the, whatever my kids needed. I was that mom. I was the mom taping all the lacrosse sticks together so the team could get, on a plane and travel or whatever. And then I wasn't. And then it's everything you do to just like think, okay, I got to get out of bed and function today. And so, just that whole mindset, it's just mind boggling to have it hit you so hard and so fast and have people say, oh, you can't have Lyme disease. You live in Florida. Well, you know what? I got it from a spider bite. And it wasn't even until I had started following Anthony Williams, the medical medium, who said, yeah, spiders can cause it. I mean, mosquito, you can get it from a number of sources. And I just was like, okay, I need to let people know that, right? It's not always a bullseye rash.
No.
So that's, it's a part of just like getting the word out, right? And so people can come find people like you that can help them and say, okay, this is what I recommend. And it's a matter of not being afraid to ask the questions. And like you said, I didn't have internet and I couldn't Google things. So I was writing down all my symptoms and I was writing down. So, I'm trying to get in to see these doctors and I'm trying to explain to the nurses what's going on with me. So, that's, that was hard. Now these days, when you get something, you've got Google, and then you kind of can try to start figuring it out a lot faster.
Yeah. Yeah. You did a lot of the groundwork, pre-work for a lot of people with your book, Silent Killers, for sure. Because I think so many people, even this day, we can get lost in the Google search. We can get lost. Now
Oh
I
yeah.
have patients that'll come to me and say, I asked Chat GPT what my symptoms were. Here we are. AI is happening. And
Yeah.
so it's, it's interesting, but at the same time, I think you have a lot of positive words that I've seen in terms of not identifying with all the symptoms, just being aware that they're there and bringing them to the doctors. And so when someone right now is going, you know what, Jennifer, this sounds definitely like me. Maybe I do need to go get some help here, but I've been pinging on Chat GPT and Google and all the other things. What would you say for someone that needs to prep for going into the doctor, someone, even just their primary care as their first step, or if they do have a specialist in their area, what kind of information have you found to be the most beneficial to provide to a provider that moves the needle the most for you?
You've got to really understand like how you feel. Like I felt short circuited. I felt like my central nervous system was short circuiting. And so I would literally, Epsom salt baths, best friend. Like I said, I get grounded by being in water. So sometimes that's where you have to do I would get so overwhelmed that I'd be like, okay, I've got to get my head underwater so I can think straight. And I know a lot of people don't have that ability, but a lot of people do have bathtubs. So there's just, you have to figure out what works for you and how to best explain it, because at least now there's enough knowledge out there that, I mean, when I was going through it, people just thought I was crazy. And, I got so skinny and I was so frail. And I mean, I really did look like I was going down. And but you've got to keep that fire lit in you, right? And somehow you've got to find a way to get outside of all the other craziness that's going on, because you have to find you in all the craziness. And when you're trying to talk to a doctor, I would go in and I would have these lists of, okay, this is what I'm dealing with, this is what I'm dealing with. And, the sleep deprivation thing was definitely one of the worst aspects of what I dealt with, for sure. But through exercise, and even though I didn't have a ton of energy, but even if you walk around the block, right, and just get out, and I tell people all the time, don't keep your Wi-Fi modems in your bedroom. Don't, it's like, and simple things that, I have everything in my house hardwired because I I want to be grounded. So, it's one of those things that you can like start figuring out what bothers you. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. People, what they don't understand is when your central nervous system is wreaking havoc, it's because it's inflamed. So when you have an inflamed system, the best thing you do is try to get grounded, because you need the inflammation to go down, right? And so that's why you try to put the best nutrients in, whether it's juicing, anything that will help the inflammation go down will help the pain decrease. And as the pain decreases, your central nervous system calms down.
Yep, less input of panic from the nervous system. Absolutely key.
Yeah, and I think that that's what happens too is like, like you said, people are going on these websites and they're like, "Oh, I have this, I have this, I have this." Well, that I didn't want to label. I think I didn't want to label. I just wanted to figure out, why am I buzzing all the time? Why is this happening? So um I even in the book, I've never referred to something as my blank because I don't own it, right? I don't want to own it. And so I still don't want to own it. So that's why I say what the disease or the issue is, but don't own it because it's harder to get rid of if you do own it, right? Yeah.
100%. Yeah, if you're wearing the t-shirt and, as I call it, the wearing the t-shirt and talking about it over and over again, yeah, you become it. And this is something that I think for a lot of people, it's hard to think about. We want to bring the attention, but at the same time, we want to heal. And this is something that you're doing a great job of really.
Well, I think that when people start, they want to talk about it. They always want to start way back in the beginning, and I'm kind of like, okay, can we fast forward to today so we can, because if we can get to today, then I can help you get to tomorrow. But if you keep talking about what yesterday and last year and all that, and I think that's where emotion code really came into play for me because it really brought out some stuff that I had no idea that was kind of stuck in my memory. Because you know how it is. People can do this because that's what they're thinking and going. But if they don't do that and they just move into today, you can heal so much faster because you're not looking in the past. You're not, and I'll tell you, when I got COVID, all of these fears came back from having Lyme disease. And, because I had so much of the same symptomology. And that's where you have to just really break the pattern and change it up and get outside and not be so consumed with electronics and constantly researching it. I mean, I'm not saying don't research, but I'm just saying that that can take you into a deeper rabbit hole than you need to go in. Sometimes ignorance is bliss.
Oh, wholeheartedly, wholeheartedly. I think you're absolutely 100%. I have found that most folks who maybe do some research but do not spend 24/7 every waking hour on information do tend to be able to live their life a little bit more
Mhm.
and yeah, can find some peace because really, like you said, it does come down to finding what your nervous system is looking for soothing.
Right. And and finding joy in something, right? Because you feel like shit. I'm not saying that you feel great, but I'm saying if you can find a little bit of joy every day and doing whatever it is that makes you happy, then take that and then every day do a little bit more of it because our bodies can heal when we're not under stress. And if we're stressing ourselves out because we're constantly, researching or looking into something or, deep diving, you are allowing our central nervous system to have peace, right? And be able to deal with things. This is a simple, silly thing, but I'll tell you, I used to I like fly in from a conference or something, and I'd literally be buzzing from flying and just all the energy around and whatnot. And I would come home, and the first thing I would do is take off all my clothes and get in the pool. And I don't care if it was midnight, I was be out there until I could get my central nervous system to calm down. I've taken Epsom salt baths at 3 a.m. in the morning because I'm like, why am I feeling this? And you just figure it out and you take all those little pieces and you keep putting them together, right? And that's what you do. And we're all different and all of our pieces look different, but the concept is still finding joy and finding love and taking that and implementing it into whatever it is that you're dealing with and trying to remove the stress to allow ourselves to heal and think positive thoughts and think about, I'm going to rebuild those nerves. I'm going to rebuild something that's not working properly. And you're manifesting the good things. And when you start manifesting good things really start happening. And that's when you feel more joy and you feel more healing. Healing's the key.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My goodness, we've got to tell folks about your book. We've got to tell folks how they can get some of this wisdom because I think, right now we are in a mode of search for a lot of people and healing. We've heard about manifesting. We've heard about joy, gratitude, all of these things, but I think we are still at a state where people haven't tested it enough to see the benefit and the long-lasting benefits of stacking and putting it together day by day, just like you're describing. So let's talk about your book, Jennifer. Let's tell everybody where they can find you and how they can engage with you to just, I would say, glean some of that positive energy.
So, yep, you can buy the book from jennifercbrower.com. You can go on my website. I'll tell you this, in my book, there's scan me codes because I tried to go into a lot of detail on the science and the different testing and mold testing and Lyme testing and all that. And when I found out from the publisher how much it was, I had everything in color because then you can identify it easier. But then I found out the cost of what it would be to print the book in color. And I was like, oh my God, no one's gonna be able to afford that. That's not gonna be it. So anyway, in my book, at the end of certain chapters, you'll see little scan me codes. And if you do scan it with your phone, it will take it to my website and you can read more of the science. So that way it takes you like deeper into a part that maybe you need to see. Somebody else doesn't need to see all that. So you can find it at jennifercbrower.com. You can join the community. You can be a part of us and have so many different people that help, different practitioners that are helping, through our community because that's what you need. You need to look at it from a various modes and different insights. And people have different gifts, and you have to tap into what resonates with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is, in a state where we now have a lot of folks with their custom programs and I shouldn't say custom programs, they're custom to the person, not to whoever is putting them out there, not to the people. And this is where I get a little leery because like you said, we are all unique. We have unique things that help us. And if we're following a cookie cutter program, that might not be the best thing. We want to look and find out what's going to work best for us. And I'm guessing you found that too out there with some of the cookie cutter programs.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, that's even on podcasts, it's so interesting because people are like, you're trying to sell me, you need enzymes. Well, you need to get on my protocol for enzymes. And I'm thinking, wait, you don't know that if I need enzymes or not. And that's something else that I talk about in the book is don't be taken advantage of by somebody that, they see you as dollar signs versus reality. So the magic pill isn't always magic. So that's why you have to find what works best for you. Something that works for me may not work for the next person. I might take a bunch of magnesium because it helps me. That doesn't mean it's going to be good for somebody else.
Absolutely. I think this particular population, chronic illness, mystery illness, is extremely susceptible to this is going to solve all your problems. This is going to be the fix that you need. And, it's one of the things that I've wanted to highlight with my podcast is that everyone is unique and it's refreshing to hear someone who's been through it, explain that, yeah, there isn't this one program that saved me. There isn't this one modality that saved me. It's experimenting, dipping your toes in literally and finding out what worked best for you. And it sounds like taking really good notes on yourself as well.
For sure. And, like when I go to conferences, if there's a pool nearby or some kind of water, you should see me. I literally will be a part of the conference. And then if there's a break, I'm in the water, right? And when you go back into the conference, I might have on dry clothes and a ball cap, but I've like grounded myself so I can go back into the energy. So it's, like I said, you just have to find what works for you and then continue that. And, hopefully it's something natural. So hopefully it's something that's grounding and, like I said, it's a matter of trying to find that internal joy because it's hard to deal with people who are just really negative all the time. And then they wonder why they're stuck. It's a matter of becoming unstuck and being open. And that's why I had so many practitioners write in the book, because I wanted people to see maybe it resonates with someone, right? Maybe somebody resonates with raindrop therapy, or maybe somebody resonates with, oh gosh, maybe I need to boost my immune system by doing this, or whatever it may be. So that's why there's so much information in such pages, because I really was just like, I just wanted it to be not like a fast action book, but a fast action opportunity to heal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I have one last question before we sign off for this podcast. What is raindrop therapy? I don't know it.
Okay, so raindrop therapy is utilizing like frankincense, myrrh, all these natural oils that are out there. And then the therapy is actually utilizing the oils in a layered basis, so it can go into your immune system. It's often administered like on your spine and on the bottom of your feet, and it goes into your immune system and it will heal whatever may be in there. Like if there's a fungus or an infection, it's utilizing natural oils to help your body heal.
So cool. See,
Yeah. So I
I
have a
love
person in my book that talked about raindrop therapy and why it works. So
there's
yeah.
so many cool things out there. And I think this is what I also wanted to highlight just by asking you what raindrop therapy was, that, like you said, you have to just look and see what resonates with you. I, like you, will find the water. Some people don't love water.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of seeing what lights you up, what works, and going for it. So, gosh, Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with me. This has been a delight. So there it
Yeah.
is, Silent Killers, guys.
Yeah. Silent Killers. And it's like I said, you can go to jennifercbrower.com, which has a bunch of information. Of course, you can always get it off of Amazon. But, like I said, I wanted to keep the book pretty precise and inexpensive, because I wanted people to be able to afford to get it and read it in whatever way they needed to, because it's so important, all the different information in there. So, but thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure, and I really, really appreciate this opportunity. So thank you for allowing me to share.
Pleasure. I look forward to chatting with you again in the future, because I think this can be very relevant for my community. Thanks again.
All right, let's do it. Thank you. Have a great day.
Hey, fellow health junkie. Thanks for listening to the Health Fix podcast. If you enjoyed tuning in, please help support me to get the word out about the podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review, and just get that word out. Thanks again for listening.